on the line now, the former Australian captain, Ricky Ponting, who's author of At the Close of Play. Ricky Ponting, good morning.
Good morning, mate. How are you?
I'm okay. Ashton Agar, I was talking to him last night. What would your advice be? He's just turned 20. I mean, you went through it from sort of age 16. What would be your advice? What are the lessons for somebody like him?
Well, yeah, it was a pretty quick rise, wasn't it, for young Ashton, coming sort of out of nowhere with a few Shield games under his belt, being picked on the Ashes touring squad, and then starring with the bat in his first Test match. It was a very quick rise, and as we've seen through the history of the game, probably with young spin bowlers, it's it does take them a while to settle in and find their rhythm and find their confidence, and they generally don't mature until they're in their well into their late 20s. So no, he's got to be patient. I think that's the big thing for him now. I mean, I know when I first came into the Australian side and then was dropped soon after, when I went back to state cricket, I just tried to make everything happen really quickly. I said to myself, you're going to score 1,000 runs in the next few games, you're going to get yourself picked, you're going to get back into that Australian team really quickly, and unfortunately it doesn't work that way. So Ashton's just got to be very patient, bide his time, keep working on his skills, work out his what works for him and what doesn't, and hopefully put some consistent games together. You
even in your book have a chapter called Angry Young Man. Were you got a bit of a temper?
Yeah, I probably still have to a certain degree, but no, I think I softened up a little bit towards the end of my career. I think family life and all that probably softened me up a little bit, and but yeah, look, I always wore my heart on my sleeve, and it's been well documented, I guess, some of the heated run-ins and things that I had with some players, and at different times umpires on the field through my career as well. Yeah,
you're still a bit angry about things, though. You say in the book you're still angry about what happened to Andrew Simons in the Harbhajan Singh thing when he was called a monkey, and you feel he was hung out to dry, Andrew Simons, don't you?
Yeah, I honestly do through that whole thing, yeah. At the end of the day, he was almost made to be the villain out of that whole situation, which was disappointing. I mean, I was angry and disappointed with the way that the whole thing was handled and the outcome, and just that few weeks was a very disappointing time for a few of us in our cricketing careers, and there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever that it had a very detrimental effect on Andrew, and his career sort of spiralled downhill after that.
I remember the first time I had much to do with Test cricketers was Kim Hughes was captain. We were in a bar in Brisbane during a Test match, and talking to a group of them, not Kim specifically, but he was there, I really got the impression they were treated almost as serfs. There's this feudal system, and the cricket board as it was then, you're the players, you'll just do what you said. I get the impression from your book that you felt it was still a bit the same way. You weren't treated well.
Oh no! Look, we were treated well. There's no doubt about that. And towards the middle of my career and late part of my career, we were paid very well, and we had more staff around our team. But I still think that we were just we were very reactionary, and we didn't ever sort of get on the front foot early enough and try and put some things in place that would allow us to remain the powerhouse in world cricket. And that's what I've sort of been a little bit vocal about in my book and over the last couple of weeks. And we're at the stage now where we're having to turn Australian cricket upside down and get some good hard-nosed ex-players back involved around the game to try and get us back on the right track.
You've had a few colourful incidents. You go through the book, punch-up with, well, not a punch-up, but an almost physical disagreement with Paul Rifle on an aircraft, trouble in a nightclub in India, swearing at police in Barbados, bourbon and beefsteak, too drunk to remember what happened. How did all that happen? How did all that unfold when you're playing international cricket?
Well, I guess the things that happened very early on in my career were probably as a result of me really not having much of a teenage life, if you like. I was, left home at the age of 15 and went to the cricket academy and trained twice a day, 6 days a week until I made my debut for Tassie as a 17-year-old. And, all the years that, everyday teenagers had at home with their mates and, going out and doing all that stuff that you've just spoken about then, I was sort of trying to do that, catch up on those years while I was playing first class and international cricket, which, so I was sort of thrust into it all as a young boy and probably wasn't mature enough for what lay ahead.
Well, yeah, I imagine a lot of young people have been through a similar thing, but did you feel there was perhaps a lack of confidence underlying it? You were trying to prove something to the players around you, not just on the field, but off the field? I'll have an extra drink, I'll have another drink, I'll be an idiot, that sort of thing.
No, I don't think that's the case. I mean, I tried to prove myself to the guys at training and on the playing field. I didn't have to try and prove myself to them off the field with any of that. But at the end of the day, it wasn't as if I was out in these clubs by myself either. It was a bit of the cultural sort of thing around the team. If you won a game and finished a game, then the boys would go out together and have a drink.
Must have made you shudder, that bourbon and beefsteak. And you do address it at length in the book, a bit of a dust-up, too drunk to remember. That must have you must have thought, oh, geez, what have I done?
Yeah, not the proudest moment in my life, that for sure. And that was a real wake-up call for me as to, to where my life and my cricket life was going. And from that moment on, pretty much, I was able to make myself a better person on a daily basis, and became a better player as a result of that, and a pretty consistent player through long periods of time in my career. And looking back now, that was certainly a pivotal moment in my whole playing time.
I thought it was the end of you ever being Australian captain. Did you? Or didn't you think about it?
I hadn't really ever thought about it at that stage, to tell the truth. I was, every team that I'd played in, I was always the young guy. In the under-17s, I was 13, and in the under-19s, I was 15, and playing state cricket as a 17-year-old, and in the Australian team as a 20-year-old. Leadership roles had sort of avoided me early on in my career because of that fact. And I'd never really thought about one day being the captain of the Australian cricket team. All I was thinking was trying to establish myself as a good, consistent player in that team. So yeah, look, it was a setback as far as leadership things were concerned, but that was where it was important that I changed things pretty quickly.
I remember talking once to an older player who was at the academy when you were a kid, at the cricket academy, and you were in the nets, and you were, I think you were practising the pull shot. I think it was a pull shot. Anyway, you were practising. I assume it was a bowling machine. And whenever you miscued, you got furious with yourself and shouted at yourself and threw your bat around. And that player, who I better not name, walked away and said, "That kid might just make it." Why do you drive yourself so hard? Is it a lack of confidence? What are you trying to prove to people, do you think?
I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody else.
Yeah?
I'm trying to prove things to myself, that I can do things the way I want them to do and the way I think things should be done. I was born with my fair share of natural talent, so there's no doubt about that, but I wasn't just going to sit back and let that be the way that I played. I wanted to get every last little bit out of myself. I wanted to make every test run that I could. And to do that, I had to train a certain way. I had to push myself all the time, and I had to be well prepared for everything that might pop up in a game. So
in a sense, you've lived your life back to front, though. I mean, well, it's not over, but 16, as you say, 13, playing with men, 21 years on the road, and now everything you've worked for your whole life as a professional cricketer, over. You're retired. Now, most of us face that sort of thing when we get into our 60s and say, what the hell are we going to do now? Are you finding that a little bit threatening?
No, I'm really excited by the next phase in my life, to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Talk about being on the road for 21 or 23 years as a professional cricketer. Then it's one thing that made retirement less daunting for me was knowing what I had as a family life outside of the game. And I'll remain pretty busy. I've got a bit on my plate already. But one thing I don't want to do in the next 12 months is be on the road and travelling too much. I want to spend some quality time with my little girls and my wife and settle into a bit of normality in my home life. So, but after that, look, I can see myself getting back involved in the game somewhere. The game's in me. It's going to be hard to keep cricket out of the system completely. So I think I'll hopefully be able to get back into some sort of coaching role and development role with some of the younger players around the country and try and help them out and help get Australian cricket back where it should be.
So we won't see you in the comedy box with all those old blokes?
Well, I'm actually in the commentary box this year. I'm doing some stuff with Channel 10 on the Big Bash, which will be a lot of fun. So I've got some of my great mates in the game I'll be working with during the summer. So we've got Adam Gilchrist and Mark Waugh and Damien Fleming and those guys. So we'll have a lot of fun calling the Big Bash. Oh,
good. I'll make sure we offer you a job. We look like calling the cricket. Could I just very quickly, one thing that really stood out to me. Oh, by the way, I sent Dean Jones a text message telling him he didn't make your best one-day team.
That was only because I didn't play with him. I didn't play with Dino. Yeah, that was guys that I played with in those makeups.
Oh, you're giving him an excuse now. Your routine. You go through your routine the night before a game, which was fascinating. Writing things down, visualising little mantras to yourself. What did you do? Writing a list of what to do. Watch the ball, play straight, loud calls. All the basics. Yeah,
all the basics of things that I knew I always did well when I was playing well. And that's what it was all about. I think with cricket training anyway, with the practice that we do leading into a test match, no matter how much you try and replicate a game, it is still so false to what you actually do in the middle. I mean, if you think about cricket practice, you're batting on practice with wickets that are completely different to the centre pitch. You're facing your bowlers in the nets, you're not facing opposition bowlers. You've got 4 or 5 guys bowling at you at once, all with different conditioned balls, which you obviously don't get in the game. The seeing at the back of the nets is totally different than what you get out in the middle as well. So our actual training is very false. And so I was never one that really worried too much about how I hit the ball in the nets. As long as I saw the ball okay and felt that I was moving okay, then that was about all I wanted to get out of a net session. So the other side of that for me is that if I couldn't control my practice, was making sure I could be in control of my mental preparation and have that right for the next day.
And that's exactly the section I've pointed Ashton Agar to have a look at. We have to deal with it. Have you had a word to Michael Clark yet?
Yeah, I sent him a message the other night actually, and sort of explained my my situation and the book. I actually left it a few days after the launch of the book, hoping that Michael would read the parts of the book that do involve him, because I didn't want him just to be reacting to what was being spoken about or what was being written or some of the headlines on some of the stories, because they were so different than what I believe my accounts in the book are. And I believe I've been very balanced with my appraisal of Michael coming into the team as a young bloke and his sort of maturing phase through the Australian cricket team to be where he is at the moment as the captain and one of the best players in the world. So
you haven't spoken yet, just exchanged messages, haven't you?
No, well, he started a game yesterday, and I'm in
course.
Perth at the moment, so the time difference is not really allowing us to do much there. But I wanted to actually address it with him before his season got underway. The last thing I want for the Australian captain is to have anything else on his mind other than playing well and preparing the boys well for the start of the first test in Brisbane.
And the final thing I loved in the book, you go back to play for your first club in Launceston, called Mowbray?
Yeah, the Mowbray Cricket Club.
Mowbray Cricket Club. You've just retired from Test cricket. You're still on the Shield side, of course. And you go out and you said you've had to open the rooms before the game, and you said you spent the hardest hour in the middle you'd probably ever had in a local club game. And then you've gone on to make 200 in the Shield match a couple of weeks later. But why was it so hard out in the middle with Mowbray?
Yeah, well, that's how ironic the game is, isn't it? I went back to that club game, and yeah, I was the first one there. I got into the change rooms, unpacked my bag, and threw my gear all over the place like I normally do, and waited for the boys to turn up. And then it was a Saturday Sunday game, so I could only play the Saturday because I had to be in Hobart on the Sunday to get ready for the Shield match. And we won the toss and batted, and I batted at number 3, I think it was, and I was out there for well over an hour and scored. I think I was 17 runs or something in over an hour, and as you just said, then it was the hardest runs I've ever scored. I mean, it was really slow pitch. The outfield was sort of halfway up your shins. You couldn't hit the ball through the field for 4. And obviously, I was putting pressure on myself to do well. I wanted to go back to the club and have some fun with the boys and make some runs. And I was I might have been second highest score for the day, but it wasn't what I had envisioned. Anyway, the next week I go back down to Hobart and score 200 in the Shield game. It's fair to say that the boys at Mowbray weren't that happy that I only made a few for them the week before.
Thanks for your time. What's the golf handicap?
My golf handicap's +1 at the moment, mate. So I've actually, before this book tour started, I've been playing quite a bit of golf and looking forward to playing a bit more through the summer.
It's going to blow out now you're retired, you know that.
Yeah, it probably will, mate. It probably will. The more I play, the worse I'll probably get.
Good to speak to you. Thanks for your time.
You too, mate. Thanks.